I had set my alarm and it stopped me. So, anyways, I was in the middle of reading. The first Jesuits were Jews. That mysterious Russian diplomacy which so alarms Western Europe is organized and principally carried on by Jews. That mighty revolution which is at this moment preparing in Germany, and which will be, in fact, a second and greater Reformation, and of which so little is as yet known in England, is entirely developing under the auspices of Jews, who almost monopolize the the professorial chairs of Germany. So yeah, they've taken over higher learning, medicine, politics, entertainment. They've taken over everything. Neander, and the founder of spiritual Christianity, and who is Regius Professor of Divinity at the University of Berlin, is a Jew. Benary, equally famous and in the same university, is a Jew. Well, the Arabic professor of Heidelberg is a Jew. Years ago, when I was in Palestine, I met a German student who was accumulating materials for the history of Christianity and studying the genius of the place, a modest and learned man. It was then unknown, since become the first Arabic scholar of the day and the author of the life of Mahomet. But for the German professors of this race, their name is legion. I think there are more than 10 at Berlin alone. See what I'm saying? They are the ones that are holding the reins of everything. They are high up in education, in academia, in politics, etc., etc., etc. Quote, I told you just now that I was going up to town tomorrow because I always made it a rule to interpose when affairs of state were on the carpet. Otherwise, I will never interfere. I hear of peace and war in the newspapers, but I am never alarmed, except when I am informed that the sovereigns want treasure. Then I know that monarchs are serious. Quote, a few years back, we were applied to by Russia. Now there has been no friendship between the court of St. Petersburg and my family. It has Dutch connections, which have generally supplied it, and our representations in favor of the Polish Hebrews, a numerous race, but the most suffering and degraded of all the tribes, have not been very agreeable to the Tsar. However, circumstances drew to an approximation between Romanovs and the Sidonias. I resolved myself to St. Petersburg. I had, on my arrival, an interview with the Russian Minister of Finance, Count Kankrin. I beheld the son of a Lithuanian Jay. The loan was connected with the affairs of Spain. I resolved on repairing to Spain from Russia. I traveled without intermission. I had an audience immediately on my arrival with the Spanish minister, Senor Mendizabal. I beheld one like myself, the son of Nuevo Cristiano, a Jew of Aragon. In consequence of what transpired at Madrid, I went straight to Paris to consult the president of the French Council. I beheld the son of a French Jew, a hero, an imperial marshal, and very properly so, for who should be military heroes if not for those who worship the Lord of hosts? And as Soult, a Hebrew. Yes, and others of the French marshals, and the most famous, Massena, for example. His real name was Manasseh. But to my anecdote, the consequence of our consultations was that some northern power should be applied to in a friendly and meditative capacity. We fixed on Prussia, and the president of the council made an application to the Prussian minister, who attended a few days after our conference. Count Arnhem entered the cabinet, and I beheld a Prussian Jew. So you see, my dear Coningsby, that the world is governed by very different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes. This is for the purposes of entertainment and education only. We are still in the androgyne agenda, and like I said when I first started reading, the stinking alarm went off, and so I had no choice but to let it be, because I'm not going back and reading like 30 minutes or however long I was reading. I'm just going to pick up where I left off. Okay, the feminist movement began as a Satanist movement in the fateful 1800s when the, quote, fountains of wisdom were opened up to the world. And what did I say earlier? Or what have I said before? Like, the feminist movement literally was Tavistokian. It was a movement dreamt up by these people who were also Jays. Okay? It's a divide and conquer tactic. Everybody knows that. Oh, everybody that has a brain in their head knows that. Okay. This is wild, though. Like, this is actually wild to know that the feminist movement began as a Satanist movement in the fateful 1800s. Okay, the fateful 1800s. I feel like that might be when Satan was released. Because why are they so fateful then? You know? When the fountains of wisdom were opened up to the world, or maybe the great hole was opened up and the enemy was let out and the darkness was let out all over the world. Per Faxnell discussed the Luciferian roots of feminism in his book Satanic Feminism, Lucifer as the Liberator of Woman in the 19th Century Culture, Oxford Press University, 2017. Quote, the late 19th and early 20th century, a world-leading female esotericist whose books sell hundreds of thousands of copies designates Lucifer the bringer of enlightenment. In Paris, a lesbian poetess publishes a volume where she praises Satan as the creator of womankind as well as the inspirer of feminine poetry and love between women. Americans are shocked when a 20-year-old woman from Butte, Montana, writes a provocative autobiographical bestseller in which she uses the devil as a symbol of freedom from conservative social mores. In particular, criticizes the oppression of women. Radical feminist, right? Is that where I left off? Yeah, in particular, she criticizes the oppression of women. Radical feminists in the United States and Europe collaborate on what they call the Woman's Bible. It eulogizes Eve's consumption of the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden, and Satan's function in the tale is claimed to be that of a benign Socratic mentor figure. Elsewhere, a distinguished American suffragette portrays black masses supposedly celebrated by medieval witches as an act of feminist insubordination towards God, his priests, and the worldly lords who have all denied the rights of women. In a critically well-received and commercially successful novel by a young Englishwoman, A Kindly Satan helps the female protagonist achieve self-actualization and autonomy from her male relatives. An incredibly wealthy Italian Marchioness, a world-famous stage actress, and illusionist silent film star play identity games that involve taking on the role of Satan or portraying themselves as being in league with this entity. Numerous Parisian women adorn themselves with jewelry sensuously depicting Eve's collusion with the devil and her partaking of the forbidden fruit. How are we to understand these texts, practices, and artifacts? End quote. The feminist, transhumanist, and posthumanist movements have spawned the androgynous, postgenderist movement, arguing that it is unfair for women to have to bear the burden of carrying children. Postgenderists advocate using science and technology to synthetically modify the genetics of human beings to render them androgynous beings. Since this also renders posthumans infertile, reproduction will be entirely artificial and carried out in synthetic wombs and laboratories. They already are. That's already happening. Human beings will be converted into immortal androgynous creatures in test tubes and artificial wombs which spare women the agony of procreation. This androgyny agenda is a Kabbalistic agenda. The Wikipedia page for postgenderism states, quote, postgenderists argue that gender is an arbitrary and unnecessary limitation on human potential and foresee the elimination of involuntary psychological gendering in the human species as a result of social and cultural designations and through the application of neurotechnology, biotechnology, and assistive reproduction technologies. Advocates of postgenderism argue that the presence of gender roles, social stratification, and gender differences are generally to the detriment of individuals and society, given the radical potential for advanced assistive reproductive options. Postgenderists believe that sex for reproductive purposes will either become obsolete or that all post-gendered humans will have the ability, if they so choose, to both carry a pregnancy to term and father a child, which postgenderists believe would have the effect of eliminating the need for definite genders in such a society. Wild. Shulamith Firestone, who was born Shulamith Bath Shmuel Ben Ari Feuerstein, wrote in her book, The Dialectic of Sex, The Case for Feminist Revolution. And these Jays, bro, they're like obsessed with sex, okay? They're also behind pornography industry. They're also behind like all this weird sex shit. They're the ones behind it. Because they're the devil's children, dude. Wake up and smell the coffee. Quote, allegedly. Quote, justice to ensure elimination of economic classes requires the revolt of the underclass, the proletariat, and in a temporary dictatorship, their seizure of the means of production. So to assure the elimination of sexual classes requires the revolt of the underclass, women, and the seizure of control of reproduction. Not only the full restoration to women of ownership of their own bodies, but also their temporary seizure of control of human fertility, the new population biology, as well as all the social institutions of childbearing and child-rearing. The end goal of feminist revolution must be unlike that of the first feminist movement. Not just the elimination of male privilege, but of the sex distinction itself. Genital differences between human beings would no longer matter culturally. A reversion to an unobstructed pansexuality, Freud's polymorphous perversity, would be probably supersede hetero-homo bisexuality. The reproduction of species by one sex for the benefit of both would be replaced by at least the option of artificial reproduction. Children will be born to both sexes equally or independently of either, however one chooses to look at it. The dependence of the child on the mother and vice versa would give way to a greatly shortened dependence on a small group of others in general, and any remaining inferiority to adults in physical strength would be compensated for culturally. So they want to not only take over the means of production of everything, but also of children. And then they also want to make children little mini adults so that they can sexualize them. That is where all this shit is going, because these people are fucking perverts. They already are fighting for the rights of pedos, okay? And that's literally what this sentence says. It would greatly give way to a greatly shortened dependence, okay? So not 18 years anymore, a shortened dependence. What, 12 years? 10 years? On a small group of others in general. Not of the mom and dad who love them and want to protect them and their innocence. No. It will be given to a group of sick fucks who probably will, what's the word? Initiate them into some weird sex cult shit. Would be compensated for culturally. So you see what's going on with the culture right now and how disgusting and depraved it is? And they just want to expose the kids to that, which is evidenced by like Drag Queen Story Hour and all this other bullshit. Kids don't have any fucking business entertaining any of that shit. An Israeli scientist is currently developing an artificial womb. This could be used by postgenderists for androgynous reproduction. Dr. David Elad of the Department of Biomedical Engineering at Tel Aviv University has developed a method for creating a uterine wall to which an embryo can attach itself. Shoshana Solomon described these developments in her article for the Times of Israel. Quote, Israeli researchers say they have engineered model of receptive human uterus, end quote. Quote, a team of bioengineers and gynecologists at Tel Aviv University say that by bioengineering cells, they have created a model of the human uterine wall where they hope embryos will be able to attach and grow. The discovery would be a step toward growing embryos in an artificially made biological womb model, the researchers said. Quote, we were able to develop a tissue-engineered model of the human uterine wall, said Professor David Elad. The next step is to study how the embryos can implant into this wall. That's an abomination, okay? That's fucking abominable, and they will face the wrath of God for that. The Kabbalistic transhumanist movement seeks to make post-humans immortal. Scientists in Israel are experimenting with ways to reverse the effects of aging. Sarah Napton reported on one such set of experiments in her article, quote, Human Aging Process Biologically Reversed in World First, end quote. Quote, scientists in Israel showed they could turn back the clock in two key areas of the body believed to be responsible for the frailty and ill health that comes with growing older. Since telomere shortening is considered the holy grail of the biology of aging, many pharmacological and environmental interventions are being extensively explored in the hopes of enabling telomere elongation. I heard Israel Anderson talking about this. That he thinks that the fruit of the tree of life, just like when you get scurvy from not eating vitamin C, your telomeres getting blunted and ending and not growing back is what ages us and keeps us from living forever, basically. And that the fruit of the tree of life probably has something in it, like oranges have vitamin C, that heal that would have enabled us to live forever. But no. Okay. Since telomere shortening is considered the holy grail of the biology of aging, many pharmacological and environmental interventions are being extensively explored in the hopes of enabling telomere elongation, said Professor Shai Efrati of the Faculty of Medicine and Segal School of Neuroscience at Tel Aviv University. Quote, the significant improvement of telomere length shown during and after these unique protocols provides the scientific community with a new foundation of understanding that aging can indeed be targeted and reversed at the basic cellular biological level, end quote. Please note that throughout this book, the religious views expressed are not those of your present author, nor of myself, but rather are a representation of the views and beliefs of those who have pursued the extermination agenda throughout history. Your author does not believe in ancient or current mythologies of any kind, and I'm starting to not either. Even if you start out reading this book with no knowledge whatsoever of Gnosticism or Kabbalism, you will learn sacred secrets and come to understand mystical doctrines only known to a few adepts alive today. This is proof of the fact that not only are the majority of the Jews alive today non-religious, they are completely unaware of the occultic beliefs revealed in this book to the general public for the first time. Likewise, the vast majority of Christians are unaware of the fact that they are worshiping Satan. That's what I'm saying. Yahweh is the devil, bro, who seeks the destruction of the created world and the end of childbirth and human life. Bro, Jesus does not seek any of that. Yahweh does. So, yeah, bro. So let's look at some of these pictures here, okay? This is by William Blake. Every ornament of perfection and every labor of love in all the Garden of Eden and in all the golden mountains was become an envied horror and a remembrance of jealousy, and every act a crime, and Albion the punisher and judge. And Albion spoke from his secret seat and said, all these ornaments are crimes. They are made by the laborers of loves, of unnatural consanguinities. I don't know what that says. And friendships, horrid to think of when inquired deeply into, and all these hills and valleys are accursed witnesses of sin. I therefore condense them into solid rocks, steadfast, a foundation and a certainty and demonstrative truth, that man be separated from man, and here I plant my seat. Cold snows drifted from around him, ice covered his loins around. He sat by Tiburn's brook, and underneath his heel shot up a deadly tree. He named it moral virtue. And I saw the law of God who dwells in chaos, hidden from the human sight. The tree spread over him its cold shadows, Albion ground. They bent down, they felt the earth, and again enrooting, shot into many a tree, an endless labyrinth of woe. From willing sacrifice of self to sacrifice of miscalled enemies, for atonement, Albion began to erect 12 altars of rough, unhewn rocks before the potter's furnace. He named them Justice and Truth, and Albion's sons must have become the first victims, being the first transgressors, but they fled into the mountains to seek ransom, building a strong fortification against the divine humanity and mercy, in shame and jealousy to annihilate Jerusalem. And that says William Blake. Okay, and I guess that was like a reading. I mean, it was written in like cursive, so it's probably like a drawing he did in a reading. And then here's another illustration. Michelangelo, Adam, Eve, and Lilith in the Garden of Evil. And this is on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Can you see all that's going on there? And then this is Nehushtan. And I want to say Ben Born Again mentions Nehushtan in his thing where he's like exposing that's interesting. There's a serpent on that cross. Nehushtan. Nehushtan has got to be the serpent. Is that Moses holding up the snake? I don't know. I don't know. This is very strange imagery. Okay. And here, Baphomet, which is their transgender goat head god that they worship. Okay. So this is the Sephiroth, the tree of life, I guess. The crown, the Adam Cadmon, is that what say? Cadmon. The Kether, the Bina, the Hokmah, the Geburah, the Chesed. That's the Androgyne. And then you have the Tiferet and Messiah, son of Joseph, which is the Yesod. And then the Seat, which is Malkut. And they have Taurus, Aries. So they have all these times. All this is witchcraft. Witchy witchcraft. Okay. Let's see what this... Okay. Here we go. The first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Aleph, whose numeric significance is 1, and its Kabbalistic significance is also 1. There are many ways of representing this letter sign, some of which were used in the ancient world. Here are some examples. And it seems like, I think if you also look up like Aramaic, Hebrew is very similar to it. It says 2 screenshots taken from Gnostic studies. Okay. And then it says the 22nd and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Tav, whose numeric significance is 400 and its Kabbalistic significance is 22. There are many ways of representing this letter sign, some of which are used in the ancient world. Here are some examples. The Phoenician alphabets, and then the ancient Hebrew alphabet, and then the modern Hebrew alphabet. So, like, it's sigil magic, dude. And then the 6th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Vav, whose numeric significance is 6, and its Kabbalistic significance is also 6. There are many ways of representing this letter sign, some of which were used in the ancient world. Here are some examples. And we know that one because that's the 666 on the Monster Energy can, right? So, okay. The next chapter is called Satan's Son. And it is a long-ass chapter. But I don't want to really start a new chapter right now. And I want to say I probably read for 20 or so minutes on the first video. And this one will just be a shorter. This book is interesting AF. See, look at this. Like, what is that? Dagon? I don't know who that is. Anyways. Thank you guys for sitting and thank you for sitting and listening to me read. This might probably be one of the most important books that people need to hear about, okay? Because this shit right here is being acted on by Jews all over the world. Many of whom don't even believe in God, all right? Anyways, and you know, I'm not saying this against all Jews, all right? I don't think any like one people group is a monolith. I think there are innocent people in every people group, but the using of this like pretend blood lineage to act like you or have some superiority over the rest of us, it's just not gonna fly. Anyways, I love you guys. If you hate bullshit, hit the subscribe button. Love you.